What's up everyone, it's Alpha Wolf with Wolfpack Gaming. Today we're going to be looking at a Pyromancer guide for Outriders. I plan to cover all 4 classes, but decided to begin with the Pyromancer because I feel that it's far more difficult to get the hang of than other classes, given how its healing works and its playstyle. I'll be covering the basics to this class as well as more advanced topics, like how you should actually be playing the Pyromancer, as well as when and how you should be using your abilities. A little disclaimer to add though, all of this could very well change once the game hits full release. This is only based off of the demo and my time spent with the Pyromancer. Let's start off with the Pyromancer skills and which ones you could benefit from the most, in my opinion. Afterwards, we'll go over some gameplay to show you exactly how the skills will function and the synergy between them. People Can Fly, the developers of Outriders, talked to us in a previous broadcast about comboing skills together. I honestly feel like this is absolutely a necessity with the Pyromancer. It doesn't just add additional enjoyment to the game or make you look cool. For the Pyromancer, it adds survivability, and in some cases maybe the only way you can even handle certain enemies or bosses. With this in mind, there's a very specific skill rotation that you need to follow in order to maximize your Pyromancer's efficiency. There's 2 different variants of skills that I think are the most efficient right now with the ones we have access to. The first being a set with Overheat, Thermal Bomb, and Heat Wave. Honestly, this is my favorite out of the 2 and definitely packs more of a punch, but in turn has a bit less survivability, and a big part of your damage and healing relies on precise timing of your skills with a small window for error. Your main source of damage is going to be your firearms and thermal bomb, and your healing will depend on a combo of heat wave and overheat, or overheat and thermal bomb. There are specific mods that you can obtain on your gear that will substantially increase your damage and survivability, but we'll go over those next. You'll have 2 main skill rotations to choose from depending on the situation. For those of you who don't know, a skill rotation would be the order you want to use your abilities in. The first of the 2 begins with a heat wave on a group of enemies. After letting your burn tick a few times on the enemies to cause some damage, you'll activate overheat, which will do damage to everything in a large radius around you. But the most important part is that any enemies which are currently burning will take massively increased damage, as you can see right here on the screen. Just be sure you activate overheat before your burn wears off. You can take some time, practicing with your burn to figure out the timing of it. The second rotation is the punch I was talking about. Not only can you do a massive amount of damage to a large area with it, but it can also provide a pretty decent burst heal, if not massive, depending on the situation. The downside is timing is everything with this, and if you miss your window by even a second, you're probably dead. The first skill in the rotation is Thermal Bomb, which will apply burn, interrupt, and deal some damage. Next, you'll activate Overheat to mark all the enemies around you and trigger the extra damage on the enemy you just thermal bombed. And remember, timing is everything. You need to make sure that thermal bomb is still active on the enemy when they die, so they'll explode, dealing insane damage in a huge radius all around them, which will most likely kill at least a handful of enemies you just marked with Overheat if you were quick enough, providing a burst heal to yourself. And that brings us to the end of the first variant for skills. The second variant is similar to the first, but plays very differently. The first variant that we just went over is more for burst damage. This set of skills will actually be more of a sustained damage with higher survivability. It's also the variant that I'd recommend to someone that's newer to the Pyromancer. Not only does it provide more survivability, it also doesn't rely nearly as much on timing as the first, which obviously makes it easier. Keep in mind that even though this playstyle is easier to handle, it does sacrifice damage for survivability, meaning you may struggle with damage on, say, a captain until you get a good grasp on how to use these skills in sync with one another to create a good synergy, and also have mods that will benefit the skills properly and efficiently. So the skills you'll be using are, once again, Overheat and Heat Wave. because they have such an amazing synergy with one another when used correctly. But you'll be swapping out Thermal Bomb for Feed the Flames. Making this switch does cost you a huge damage skill, but in turn grants you an on-demand heal. Feed the Flames is an immobilize skill that can be used as a single target crowd control or a self-heal. When you use it, you'll not only pull that enemy towards you, but you'll also inflict Ash on them, which is a crowd control status that works similar to freezing an enemy. It prevents attacks or movement, but Ash only lasts for 2.5 seconds, while Freeze lasts a second longer. On top of the crowd control effects, it'll also heal you, which is where the increased survivability comes in. The rotation for these skills is pretty simple. Your main damage will come from the Heat Wave and Overheat synergy just like before. So use Heat Wave first to apply your burn, then activate Overheat to consume the burn status on the enemies. You'll use Feed the Flame for crowd control or as an emergency heal when needed. The biggest thing about this build is that in order to reach its full potential, it does depend on mods pretty heavily, which we're going to be going over next. Mods are incredibly important for any class, but especially important for the Pyromancer. One reason being that it doesn't heal solely from just kills or damage like the other classes. As the Pyromancer, you only heal when an enemy dies, but it's been marked. Marked meaning it's recently been damaged by one of your skills or your melee ability. So if you look at this screenshot, you'll notice here that this enemy has a special symbol underneath its health bar. This means the enemy's marked, and if it dies with this symbol, you'll be healed. Now that we've gotten healing out of the way, we can start getting into the mods. First off, I want to make it clear that it's not always about what gear piece has the highest armor. The max armor that one piece of gear can have right now in the demo is 209 for rares. But that doesn't mean that you need to have all 209 gear. The more important factor is what attribute and mods are attached to that gear. For the Pyromancer, you'll want gear pieces with the Anomaly Power attribute to increase your skills. We'll touch base on mods, beginning with the Thermal Bomb build first, then we'll go over the mods for the Feed the Flames build. So, starting with the headgear mod, you're going to be looking for Ember Shield. Ember Shield will increase your resistance by 10% for each status consumed when using Overheat, for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. This is probably the most important mod for this build, because we do a lot of damage but don't have a lot of survivability. Our mods will help balance that out a bit and help keep us alive. Next up is our pants, which you'll be looking for Sunburn, which will increase your overheat damage by 46 whenever you use it on an enemy that's burning. Then we have the gloves. This one is also extremely important. You're going to be looking for Blacksmith. Blacksmith gives your character a 46 armor bonus for 8 seconds for each burn that you consume on enemies when using Overheat. So if you consume 10 burns, then you gain 460 bonus armor. That's insane. And finally, for your boots, you're going to want Heat Leech, which is for Heat Wave, and it'll increase your skill leech by 10% for 5 seconds after using Heat Wave. For the chest mod, I haven't really found one that's incredibly important to this build yet. It's possible that I just haven't gotten lucky enough to find the right one, or maybe it's just not in the demo. Either way, pick the chest mod that complements you the best. Now, we'll go ahead and move on to the Feed the Flame build mods. So, for the Feed the Flame build, for its mods, you're going to want Fire Eater on the headgear, which will increase health drain against a burning target by 150%. This is a huge increase to your self-heal, as long as you inflict burning before doing Feed the Flames. On the chest, you'll want Final Breath, which will also increase your health efficiency for the drain by another flat 25%. So if it's an emergency and you don't have time to inflict burn, you'll still get an extra 25% health drain. For the pants, you'll still want Sunburn from the last build. Gloves, you'll want Irradiation Wave, which will cause Heat Wave to inflict weakness on enemies that it damages. Weakness causes enemies afflicted by it to do 30% less damage for 6 seconds. And finally, for the boots, you want Wide Grip, which will allow your Feed the Flames to pull and health drain up to 2 enemies at the same time. And that does it for the mods, and brings us to the conclusion of my guide and builds for the Pyromancer. I'm not going to touch base on the class tree just because there's only 2 points right now and it seems a bit pointless. But when the full game releases, I will be sure to release a reworked guide and build for the full game. I'll leave you with some gameplay of both of my builds in action, farming the Terra Infirma Captain, which is probably by far the hardest fight in the demo for the Pyromancer, specifically to show you just how well my builds work. I hope you enjoyed my guide. If you liked it, tell me what you thought in the comments and hit that like button. Also, feel free to subscribe for more Outriders content and builds for the rest of the classes. Take it easy, everyone.